I got a call from the ER. My daughter had been beaten. Dad, it was him. The billionaire's son. Then he sent me a text, she refused to spend a night with me. My dad owns the city. You can't touch me. He was right, I couldn't. So I called a retired man in Sicily, her uncle. I said only 2 words, family business. A rough voice answered, I'm on my way. What he did next left me stunned. The day I finally broke, I realized some lines aren't meant to be crossed, they're meant to be shattered into a million pieces when someone you love is hurt. And sometimes, you have to become the monster to protect your own. For 20 years, I lived by a code forged in the crucible of army intelligence. Patience wins wars. Information is the ultimate weapon. And evil men always believe they're untouchable, until they're not. I left that life 12 years ago, trading classified briefings for bedtime stories, running a quiet security firm out of Portland. It was a good life. Legitimate work, good pay, and most importantly, I was home for dinner with Amber and our daughter, Karina. Our little house in Beaverton, with those pencil marks on the kitchen doorframe tracking Karina's growth, was our sanctuary. That Friday evening, Karina, all 21 years of her, with Amber's striking looks and my stubborn determination, called out, Dad, I'm heading out. She was going to a study group, then coffee with friends. My girl was double majoring in political science and journalism, hell-bent on changing the world. And I had no doubt she would. Text when you're on your way home, I said, a familiar refrain. She just rolled her eyes, affectionate, always do, old man. Amber, covered in clay from her studio, added, be safe, sweetheart. Later, as Amber settled beside me, we talked about nothing much, just appreciating the good life we'd built. Neither of us knew those would be the last peaceful moments for a very long time. Then the call came. 10:47 a.m. The wrong time, the wrong ring. My old combat instinct screamed. Dr. Patel from Emmanuel Hospital. Karina. She was in the ER. Stable, he said, but come immediately. The drive downtown was a blur. Amber sat rigid, knuckles white. I called Coleman Foster, my oldest friend, a detective with Portland PD, Emmanuel Hospital. I choked out. She's stable, but that's all I know. Find out what happened. Coleman didn't hesitate. I'm on it. I'll meet you there. The ER waiting room felt like a tomb under those buzzing fluorescent lights. A nurse led us back immediately. Never a good sign. Dr. Patel met us, his face a careful mask of professional sympathy, the one doctors wear before they get you with bad news. Your daughter was assaulted, he began. Concussion, broken nose, 3 cracked ribs, extensive bruising, defensive wounds. I stopped hearing words. Amber's hand gripped my arm, but all I could hear was a roaring in my ears. Through a small window, I saw her. My Karina. Her beautiful face, a canvas of purple and black, her left eye swollen shut. Can we see her? Amber's voice was a whisper, a broken plea. Inside the room, Karina's good eye fluttered open. Mom. Dad. Her split lip made speaking difficult. I'm okay. Amber broke, tears falling as she held our daughter's hand. I stood there, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly helpless. In Kandahar, Baghdad, a dozen other hellholes, I'd always known what to do. Always had a mission, a target, a plan. But here, looking at my broken daughter, that careful control I'd spent decades building began to crack. Who did this? My voice was unervingly calm. Karina's jaw tightened. She had my stubbornness. I saw her decide. Stanford Phelps. The name meant nothing then. Oh, but I'd learn. Everything. She recounted the story, voice cracking. A fundraiser. He seemed charming. Asked her to dinner. Changed locations last minute to his father's penthouse. He said spending the night with him was the prize for his donation. She couldn't finish. My blood ran cold. Did he? I couldn't complete the question. No, she cried. I fought. I screamed. I got away before a doorman heard and called 911. Her good I met mine. But Dad, he wasn't scared. Not even when the ambulance came. He just smiled and said his father would handle it. Coleman arrived 20 minutes later, grim-faced. He was my roommate in basic training, my best man, Karina's godfather. He delivered the news I already suspected. Stanford Phelps, 26. Only son of Robert Phelps, real estate developer, worth north of $3 billion. Coleman's voice was tight with anger. The kid has a sheet, but nothing that ever stuck. 3 prior assault allegations, all withdrawn. 2 DUIs that vanished. A sexual assault complaint from 2 years ago that got buried. How is that possible? Robert Phelps owns half the city council, funds the DA's campaigns, and has enough lawyers to form their own firm. He paused, frustrated. Uniform officers responded. Phelps's attorney was already there. By the time I heard and made calls, Stanford was home free. No arrest, no charges filed. The DA's office is calling it insufficient evidence to proceed. My daughter is in a hospital bed with a broken face. I know, true. And I'm telling you, this is bigger than what I can touch. The Phelps family is protected at levels that make my badge worthless. I stood very still. Then I'll handle it. My voice was quiet, but there was an edge that made Coleman step back. We'd seen combat together, buried friends. He recognized that tone. Don't do anything that makes me have to arrest you. You won't, I promised. You won't find anything to arrest me for. I returned to Karina's room. She was asleep now, medicated. Amber stood at the window, tear-streaked. Coleman says the man who did this will face no charges, I said quietly. I heard. Amber turned. I saw something in her eyes I rarely witnessed, cold fury. My brother, she said. We should call Bruno. In 17 years, Amber had never suggested contacting her uncle for anything more than birthday cards. The fact that she was suggesting it now spoke volumes about the Moreno family's unspoken understanding. Some problems the law couldn't fix. Bruno Moreno specialized in the other kind. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. She refused to spend a night with me. My dad owns this city. You can't touch me. I showed it to Amber. Her face went pale, then hardened. Call him, she said. Call Bruno. I made the call from the hospital parking lot at 4 a.m. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered in Italian. Uncle Bruno, I said in English. It's Truman Larson. Amber's husband. I remember who you are, Bruno said, his English carrying the ghost of Italian vowels. Why do you call at this hour? Karina was attacked. Beaten badly. The man who did it is untouchable. Billions in family money, owns half the police force. The district attorney won't touch him. A long silence. Then, tell me everything. I laid it out with military precision, the assault. Stanford's history, his father's influence, the mocking text message. 7 minutes without interruption. Karina is my blood, Bruno finally said. And your family by marriage. This makes it my concern. I will arrive tomorrow evening. Do nothing until I get there. I started to protest. Bruno, his voice carried steel. In my world, we have a saying, revenge served hot burns only the hand that pours it. You are angry, and you should be. But anger makes men sloppy. Wait for me. We will handle this the right way. The call ended. I spent the next morning researching Stanford Phelps. His social media was a monument to privilege and narcissism. Yachts, exclusive clubs, different women every week. Robert Phelps, his father, was easier to research. Self-made billionaire, so the story went. Real estate empire built on aggressive development and political connections. I dug deeper, using access protocols from my intelligence days. The surface was legitimate, but in the margins, I found shadows. Lawsuits settled quietly, building code violations that vanished, competitors who mysteriously lost financing. Robert Phelps built his empire on pressure and manipulation. And he'd raised his son to believe the same rules applied to people. Coleman called around noon. Off the record, you didn't hear this from me. Stanford Phelps was questioned this morning. Lasted 5 minutes before his lawyer shut it down. But I got a copy of his statement. Claims Karina came willingly, consensual encounter, then got upset when he wouldn't fund her pet causes. Became aggressive. He defended himself. She accidentally fell. My knuckles went white. His lawyer also filed a counter-complaint, Coleman continued. Claiming Karina was trying to extort him. Says the Larson family should expect a defamation lawsuit. He's going to sue us. It's a pressure tactic. Designed to shut you down. I'm sorry, true. This system is broken when it comes to guys like this. After he hung up, I just sat there. Stanford wasn't just confident he'd get away with it. He was actively on offense. Weaponizing the legal system. That evening, Karina was more alert. The swelling had gone down, but the bruises were deepening. Amber returned, and we tried to coax Karina to eat soup when she looked up. I need to tell you something. Her voice was clear, determined. Before he smashed my phone, I was recording. My blood ran cold. Recording what? When he changed the location, something felt off. So, I started a voice memo app before I went inside. It was in my jacket pocket. The whole thing. Him propositioning me. Me refusing. Him attacking me. It's all there. The phone was destroyed, but everything backs up to the cloud. Amber's hand flew to her mouth. You have evidence. I gave the police my cloud password, Karina continued, but Coleman said, she looked at me, he said it wouldn't matter. That evidence gets lost when people like Stanford are involved. I pulled out my phone and called Coleman. The recording from Karina's phone hasn't been logged into evidence yet. A pause. No. Nothing in the system. Why? Because it exists. Full audio of the assault. Backed up to her cloud storage. Coleman's voice dropped. True, if I know about this, I have to submit it officially. And if I submit it, it'll be in the system where his lawyers can see it and get it suppressed. Or it might just disappear. Don't submit it yet, I said. Give me 24 hours. I'm asking you to be strategic about when and how you introduce it. 24 hours, Cole. Then do whatever you have to do. Another pause. 24 hours. But true, be careful. These people don't play fair. Neither do I said, and ended the call. Bruno Moreno arrived at Portland International at 6 p.m. I picked him up alone. Amber stayed with Karina. The man who emerged from the terminal looked nothing like a stereotype. At 72, Bruno was lean and weathered, in an expensive suit, carrying a single leather bag. Silver hair, eyes that missed nothing. We embraced briefly. Show me. At the hospital, Bruno sat by Karina's bed for a long time, studying her injuries, his expression like stone. He took her hand gently, speaking in soft, Italian words I didn't understand but recognized as an oath. Then he turned to me. Now we talk somewhere private. At a diner, in a corner booth, Bruno ordered espresso and listened as I laid out everything, the corruption, the recording. This recording, Bruno said. It is your ace. But played through their corrupt system, it will be neutralized. We must use it differently. I'm listening. You were intelligence. You understand leverage and pressure points. He sipped his espresso. Robert Phelps has built an empire on corruption. He has many enemies. People he has crushed, cheated, destroyed. They want revenge but lack the means or the courage. We find them. We unite them. And we use your daughter's evidence not to convict his son, though that will be pleasant, but to destroy the father's empire. When the empire falls, the son becomes vulnerable. You're talking about a coordinated campaign. I'm talking about war, Bruno corrected. Not with guns. Those are crude. War with information, with pressure, with fear. You expose Robert Phelps as the criminal he is. You collapse his political protection. And Stanford becomes just another violent man without a shield. Bruno's smile was cold. Then we handle him properly. This will take time. Good things do. Your daughter needs time to heal. You need time to build your case. And I need time to make some calls. Bruno leaned forward. In Sicily, we have an expression, all'inimico tu marilu cori. To your enemy, not even the heart. But we are patient. We plan. We wait. And when we strike once and completely. Something settled in my chest. Purpose. Direction. This was a mission. What do you need from me? Everything you can find on Robert Phelps and his business. Every enemy, every rival, every person he has wronged. I will handle finding the ones with useful information and the courage to use it. You will handle the investigation and intelligence gathering. Together, we will build a trap. Bruno's eyes glinted. And when it closes, both Stanford and his father will wish they had never heard the name Larson. Karina came home 3 days later. She was moving slowly, retreating to her room. Amber took leave from teaching, and our house became a quiet, careful place of healing. My home office became a war room. Bruno took a hotel room but spent his days at our house, making calls in Italian, disappearing for meetings he never explained. The old man moved with surprising energy. His network, it seemed, extended far beyond Sicily. I made some progress, Bruno announced on the 4th day, spreading documents across my desk. Robert Phelps has been busy making enemies for 30 years. I have found 3 who are willing to help if we can guarantee their safety and success. There was Eric Ford, a former city councilman whose career was destroyed by Phelps. Harvey Moran, a contractor Phelps bankrupted. And Andreas Wright, a journalist Phelps sued into silence. They all have pieces of the story, Bruno explained, but separately, they lack the evidence and the courage to act. Together, properly orchestrated, they become dangerous. I'd been conducting my own investigation, mapping Robert Phelps's empire, shell companies, offshore accounts, the web of political relationships. Corruption was everywhere. Bribes. Falsified building permits. Intimidation. Tax evasion. The question is how to make this public in a way that can't be suppressed, I said. Coleman Foster arrived that evening, off duty, and studied my compiled evidence. This is good work. Better than good. This is prosecutable. But the DA won't touch it. Marcia Cantrell has been in Phelps's pocket for years. So, we go over her head, Bruno said. The federal authorities, Coleman considered. The FBI would need a reason. And they need to believe they have a case that won't be killed by political pressure. I'd been thinking about this. What if it wasn't just about Robert Phelps? What if we connected his corruption to a broader pattern? Other developers, other politicians. A systemic problem the feds couldn't ignore. Coleman's eyes narrowed. You need a trigger. Something that forces their hand. Makes it a PR nightmare if they don't investigate. A scandal, Bruno said softly. Something public that cannot be ignored. Something that makes Robert Phelps radioactive to his political allies, forcing them to distance themselves. And in that moment of weakness, we introduce the evidence through channels he cannot control. I pulled up Stanford Phelps's social media. Stanford is throwing a party next weekend. Annual charity gala at his father's downtown tower. Politicians, business leaders, media coverage. He posts about it every year. Makes a big show of being philanthropic. You want to crash his party? Coleman asked. I want to make it the last party he ever throws, I said. Over the next 5 days, we planned. Bruno brought Eric, Harvey, and Andreas into the fold. Coleman identified clean FBI agents. I focused on Stanford. The young man's arrogance was a gift, he documented everything online. I found a pattern, multiple women who'd appeared in his photos, then vanished. I tracked them down. Diana Hurley, now in Seattle. She initially hung up, but I persisted. My daughter was assaulted by Stanford Phelps, I said. I'm not a reporter. I'm not a cop. I'm a father trying to protect my child. If he did something to you, too, I need to know I'm not alone. After a long pause, she spoke. He raped me. 2 years ago. His lawyers made me sign an NDA and accept a settlement. Said if I ever spoke about it, they'd bury me. Would you be willing to break that NDA if I could guarantee he'd face consequences? Do you really think you can touch him? His family owns everything. I'm working on it, I said. But I need to know I'm not wrong about who he is. Diana gave me 3 more names. By the end of the week, I'd spoken to 7 women. 6 had stories mirroring Karina's. Assault. Intimidation. NDAs. Settlements. 1 was a high schooler. None would go on record. The fear Robert Phelps instilled was too deep. But they provided details, dates, locations. A pattern of predatory behavior spanning a decade. This is valuable, Coleman said, reviewing my notes. But without testimony, it's not enough. We have Karina's recording, I reminded him. Which we haven't officially submitted. Bruno, quiet until now, spoke. You are thinking like men bound by their laws. We are not bound. The recording does not need to be evidence in a court. It needs to be heard by the public. I understood immediately. A leak. Not yet, Bruno cautioned. First, we set the stage. We prepare the battlefield. The charity gala is in 3 days. We use that event to create chaos in Robert Phelps's world. Then, in the midst of that chaos, we release the recording through channels that cannot be suppressed. Social media. Multiple news outlets simultaneously. Directly to the FBI. By the time his lawyers react, it will be everywhere. And Stanford? I asked. Bruno's smile was cold. For him, we have a different plan. One that addresses the personal nature of his crime. The day before the gala, I visited Karina. Physically, she was healing. The bruises were fading. But I saw the shadows in her eyes, the way she startled at unexpected sounds, the anger simmering beneath her composure. I want to help, she said, after I explained the plan. Absolutely not. You've been through enough. Dad. Her voice was firm. He did this to me. And he's done it to other women. I can't just hide in my room while you try to fix it. I need to be part of this. Amber appeared in the doorway. She's right. Amber, I don't like it either. But Karina isn't a child, Amber insisted. And this is her fight, too. We can't protect her by keeping her locked away. We protect her by making sure Stanford Phelps can never hurt anyone again. I looked between them, seeing the same fierce determination. What do you want to do? I asked Karina. The recording. When you release it, I want to release a statement with it. My name. My story. No anonymity. If other women see me stand up, maybe they'll find the courage to come forward, too. His lawyers will come after you. Let them try. Her jaw set in that stubborn way that was pure larceny. I'm done being afraid. Friday arrived, cold and rainy. The Phelps Tower glowed, its ground floor converted into an elegant venue. Limos and luxury cars delivered guests. Outside, protesters gathered. Signs reading, Phelps destroys communities. News crews, tipped off by Andreas, arrived to cover the demonstration. In his hotel room, Bruno made final preparations. He was dressed in an immaculate suit. I wore similar formal attire, feeling ridiculous. You're certain about your role? Bruno asked. Get inside. Locate Stanford. Keep eyes on him until the signal. And you remember, no violence. Not yet. Tonight is about destroying his father's empire. The personal accounting comes later. At 7:03 p.m., Bruno and I entered, blending into the crowd. Security was professional but minimal. Robert Phelps was arrogant enough to believe his money made him untouchable. The party was exactly what I'd expected. Excessive wealth on display. I spotted Robert Phelps near the bar. A thick man in his 60s, silver hair, the confident posture of someone who'd never been told no. And beside him, Stanford. The young man looked like a recruitment poster for inherited privilege. Designer suit. Perfect hair. A champagne flute. A smug smile. He was laughing at something a councilwoman was saying, utterly at ease. I felt my hands clench. This was the man who'd beaten my daughter. Who'd sent that mocking text. Who'd walked away without consequences. Every instinct screamed to cross the room and break that smug face. But Bruno's hand touched my elbow briefly. A reminder. Patience, Bruno murmured. The trap is set. Now we spring it. At 8 p.m. precisely, Andreas Wright triggered the first domino. From outside, he sent a coordinated message to 15 journalists, Phelps corruption scandal breaking now. Check social media and your secure inboxes. Then he posted a thread on social media, a carefully constructed narrative about Robert Phelps's criminal empire, complete with documents from Harvey Moran, building violations, evidence of bribes. Within minutes, it was being shared hundreds of times. Inside the gala, guests began checking their phones. Conversations shifted. People stepped away to take calls. I watched Robert Phelps's face as someone showed him a phone screen. The confidence cracked, replaced by confusion, then anger. Stanford noticed his father's reaction, pulled out his own phone. His smugness faltered. Now, Bruno said quietly. We add fuel to the fire. He nodded to Eric Ford across the room. Eric approached several city officials, showed them documents on his tablet. Their reactions ranged from shock to fury. Several immediately left the party. At 8:15, Harvey Moran released his building code report to every news outlet. The Phelps Tower itself, this gleaming monument to Robert's success, was flagged as potentially dangerous, with structural deficiencies covered up by bribed inspectors. The irony was delicious. Robert Phelps's gala was being held in a building that might need to be evacuated. By 8:30, the party was in chaos. Half the guests had left. Reporters were calling for comment. The protesters outside had swelled to over 400, their chants audible even through the tower's thick glass. Robert Phelps stood in the center of the room, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders. His face was red, veins visible in his neck. Political allies actively avoided eye contact, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. And Stanford. Stanford looked genuinely frightened for the first time. He stood near the bar, isolated. People who'd been laughing at his jokes minutes ago pretended not to see him. It's time, Bruno said. My phone buzzed. A message from Coleman, FBI en route to Phelps Tower. Authorization for immediate document seizure based on fraud evidence. ETA 10 minutes. Things were moving faster than planned. The trap was working almost too well. Bruno had pulled out his own phone, navigating to a private website. The recording, he said. Karina gave me permission to upload it to multiple platforms simultaneously. Once I press this, it will go live on 5 different social media platforms, 3 YouTube channels, and be emailed directly to 24 journalists. It cannot be stopped. Do it, I said. Bruno's finger touched the screen. Within seconds, Karina's voice filled the internet. I appreciate the invitation, Mr. Phelps, but I'm not comfortable going to your apartment instead of the restaurant. I think I should leave. Then Stanford's voice, smooth and entitled. Don't be difficult. I'm offering a very generous donation. All you have to do is be friendly. And Karina's response, firm, that's not what philanthropy means. I'm leaving. What followed was raw audio of the assault. Stanford's voice turning ugly. Furniture crashing. Karina's screams. His casual laughter. The recording lasted 8 minutes and captured everything. His confession that he expected sex for his donation, his assertion that his father owned the police, his threats. It was damning. It was crystal clear. And it was already viral. I watched Stanford's face go white as someone showed him a phone. The young man's hands were shaking. Robert Phelps pushed through the remaining crowd, grabbed his son's arm, pulled him toward a private elevator. But before they could reach it, FBI agents entered the building. Hayes, leading a team of 6, all wearing blue windbreakers with yellow letters. Robert Phelps. Hayes announced, his voice carrying across the now silent room. We have a warrant to seize records related to Phelps Development Corporation's business practices. We're also placing you under investigation for fraud, bribery, and racketeering. Robert's face went from red to purple. You have no authority. We have plenty of authority, sir. Federal jurisdiction supersedes your local connections. Hayes gestured to his team. Secure all computers and file servers in this building. No one leaves until we've documented what we need. As FBI agents spread through the tower, Bruno leaned close to me. The empire falls. Now we handle the sun. But before we could move, Stanford Phelps did something stupid. Panic. Arrogance. Or just the instinct of a cornered animal. He ran. Not toward the elevator, but toward the emergency stairs, shoving past guests, knocking over a champagne fountain. Stop him. Robert shouted, but no one moved. Bruno and I followed at a measured pace. Coleman's voice came through my earpiece. I've got eyes on the back exit. He's heading for the parking garage. Stanford burst into the underground garage, looking wildly for his car. I emerged from the stairwell behind him, blocking the exit. Stanford Phelps, I said quietly. The young man spun around. Up close, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Stay away from me. My father will have you arrested. You are trespassing. I repeated. Your father's currently being placed under federal investigation. His protection is gone. His money is about to be frozen. His lawyers are busy saving themselves. I took a step forward. Which means you're all alone. I didn't do anything to your daughter, she wanted. Finish that sentence, I said, very softly. And I will break your jaw. We both know what you did. So do the 7 other women I found. So does everyone who's heard that recording by now. And believe me, millions have heard it. Stanford's bravado crumbled. What do you want? Justice. I'll pay. My father will pay. Your father is bankrupt by morning. The FBI is seizing his assets. The city is shutting down his buildings. His political allies are running away so fast they're leaving skid marks. There is no money coming to save you. Bruno emerged from another stairwell, cutting off Stanford's other escape route. In Sicily, the old man said conversationally, when a man harms a daughter of our family, there's only one acceptable response. It is very old-fashioned. Very permanent. Stanford's legs buckled. Please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. You made many mistakes, Bruno said. The first was believing you were untouchable. The second was sending that arrogant text message to a father who loves his daughter. The third was existing in a world where men like me still exist. Coleman's voice in my ear. True. I've got 2 Portland PD units responding. Someone called about a disturbance. You need to clear out. But I wasn't finished. Do you know what my daughter is doing right now? While you're cowering in this garage, she's preparing to testify. To go on record. To put her name and face to what you did, so that every other woman you've hurt knows they're not alone. That's courage, Stanford. Real courage. Something you'll never understand. I'll confess, Stanford said desperately. I'll turn myself in. I'll plead guilty. Just don't. Don't what? I asked. Don't hurt you. Don't make you face consequences. You're going to face consequences, Stanford. Legal ones. Social ones. Personal ones. The question is how badly you'll suffer before you do. Bruno produced a phone and showed Stanford the screen. A news article, already posted, showing his face next to headlines about assault and rape allegations. Your name is ruined. Your life as you knew it is over. The question is whether you survive long enough to see the inside of a prison cell. That was when Stanford broke completely. Dropping to his knees, sobbing in the concrete garage. I felt no satisfaction looking at him. Only cold calculation. This man had hurt my daughter. And this moment of fear was only the beginning. Let's go, I said to Bruno. He's not worth any more of our time. We left Stanford sobbing. By the time Portland police arrived, he was still there, incoherent and broken. Coleman later told me Stanford had been taken into custody, not arrested, but protective custody. For his own safety. The next morning, the news was everywhere. Robert Phelps's empire was collapsing. Federal investigations were expanding. Stanford Phelps faced potential charges from multiple assaults. The recording had been played on every major news outlet. Karina's statement had been read by millions. 3 more women had come forward. But for me, watching the news with Amber and Karina in our living room, it still wasn't enough. The legal system was moving. Yes, justice might be served through courts. But the personal accounting, the real price for what Stanford had done, was still unpaid. Bruno seemed to read my thoughts. Patience, the old man said. The trap is closed. Now comes the final part. The part where we ensure this ends properly. The weekend after the gala was chaos across Portland. Robert Phelps's arrest made national news. The FBI had found evidence of massive fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. His assets were frozen. His buildings sealed. His political allies tripped over themselves to return campaign contributions. Stanford Phelps, meanwhile, had been formally charged with assault and held on $500,000 bail, an amount his father could no longer pay. The young man sat in county jail. According to Coleman's sources, he wasn't handling confinement well. He's in protective custody, separated from general population, Coleman reported. For his own safety. Good, Karina said coldly. She was getting stronger every day, bruises fading, her spine straightening. She'd done a televised interview, speaking clearly, calmly, about her assault. The response was overwhelming. Support poured in. More importantly, 8 additional women had come forward. The DA has no choice but to prosecute aggressively now, Coleman said. Marcia Cantrell is trying to save her career by throwing Stanford under the bus. She's talking about seeking maximum sentences. But something was bothering me. The legal system was working. Stanford would likely spend years in prison. Robert's empire was destroyed. Justice, by conventional measures, was being served. So why did it still feel incomplete? Bruno had been quiet. Making calls. Meeting contacts. On Monday evening, he requested a private meeting at his hotel. The boy will go to prison, Bruno said, pouring us both whiskey from his minibar. Probably 8 to 12 years, with good behavior. He will survive. Men like him often do. Protected even in jail by his remaining family connections. He will be humiliated, certainly. Broken, perhaps. But alive. And free, eventually. You're saying that's not enough. I'm saying you have a choice. Bruno sat across from me. The legal system will deliver its version of justice. For many people, that would be sufficient. But in my world, we understand that some crimes require a more permanent response. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about ensuring he never hurts another woman. Ever. Bruno's eyes were steady. In Sicily, when a man commits an unforgivable act against a family, there is no half measure. No counting on parole boards or rehabilitation. There is only finality. I stared at my whiskey. I'd killed men before. In combat. But this was different. Premeditated. Revenge. Not war. I need to think about this, I said. Of course. But think quickly. He is vulnerable. Now. In custody, his father unable to protect him. This window will not remain open forever. That night, I lay awake beside Amber, wrestling with the question. 20 years I served my country, believing in justice, law, and order. I'd left that life to be a good husband, a good father, a good citizen. Taking the law into my own hands, taking a life in cold blood, was crossing a line I'd never imagined. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Karina's broken face. I heard Stanford's voice on that recording, laughing. I remembered that text, "You can't touch me," the law would punish Stanford. But would it protect the next woman who crossed his path a decade from now, when he was released on parole? Would it prevent him from hurting someone else's daughter? Wednesday morning brought news that complicated everything. Andreas Wright called me directly. "You need to see this." He'd uncovered evidence that Robert Phelps had been quietly liquidating offshore assets despite the FBI's seizure orders. Money moved to Switzerland. Cayman Islands. Over $200 million federal investigators didn't know about. "He's preparing to run," Andreas explained. "And if he runs, he takes Stanford's defense fund with him. There are rumors of a deal being negotiated. Robert might flip on his political co-conspirators in exchange for reduced charges and witness protection. If that happens, Stanford might walk on a technicality. His lawyers are already filing motions." I felt ice in my veins. How possible is this? It's the federal system. Strange things happen. And Robert Phelps has information that could destroy dozens of powerful people. If he offers to talk, the prosecutors might prioritize that over putting his son away. That afternoon, Coleman confirmed it. There's talk of a deal. Robert has evidence of corruption going up to the state level. Governors, senators, federal contractors. The FBI wants that information more than they want Stanford's conviction. I'm sorry, true. It's politics. Karina found me in my office that evening, staring at nothing. "Dad, you okay? How do you feel about the idea that Stanford might not go to prison?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I'd be angry. But I'd survive. Because at least his life is destroyed. At least everyone knows what he did. What if he rebuilds? What if he changes his name, goes somewhere else, and in 10 years he's hurting women again?" Karina sat down beside me. "Then I want someone to stop him. Permanently." She took my hand. "Karina, I know what you and Uncle Bruno are discussing. Mom told me. And I know you're struggling with it because you're a good man. But Dad, sometimes good men have to do hard things to protect people from bad men. That's what you did in the army, right? Made hard choices so other people would be safe. That was war. This is different. Is it? Stanford Phelps is a predator. He's hurt at least 9 women that we know about, probably more. If the legal system lets him go, what happens to the next woman? What happens to her father? He'll be standing where you are now, wondering if he should have done more to stop it." I looked at my daughter. My brave, brilliant, damaged daughter. I saw the weight of truth in her eyes. She wasn't asking me to kill for revenge. She was asking me to kill to prevent future harm. The difference was subtle. But significant. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. That night, I made my decision. Bruno's plan was simple and elegant. The kind of thing only a man with decades of experience in violence could devise. Stanford is in protective custody, separated from other inmates. But every prisoner has access to the infirmary. And every infirmary has blind spots. "You have someone inside?" I asked. "I have someone who has someone inside. The chain is sure enough to be reliable. Long enough to have deniability. But you must be certain, Truman. Once we do this, there is no undoing it. Are you certain?" I thought about Karina's bruised face. The 8 other women. The unknown number 2 frightened to come forward. Stanford's smug smile. His father's arrogant certainty that money could buy anything. And the fact that the legal system, the system I'd spent my life believing in, was preparing to let a serial rapist walk free because his father had valuable information. "I'm certain," I said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "It has to look natural. Accidental. No execution-style murder. And I want to be there. I want to see it happen." Bruno studied me. "This will change you. Seeing a man die, even a man who deserves it, is different from making the decision. Are you prepared for that? In combat, death comes quickly. This will be slow and deliberate. You will have time to think. Time to doubt. Time to regret. And you cannot show any of that. You must watch him die and feel nothing. Show nothing. Because any crack in your control is a risk to all of us." I understand. Then we proceed. But Truman, after this, you can never go back. There is no version of you that exists after this moment who did not participate in murder. You must accept that. I'd been thinking about this for 3 days. I'd examined my conscience. My values. My identity. I'd asked myself if I could live with the alternative, Stanford alive, potentially free, potentially hurting more women. And I'd found that I couldn't. Some men need killing, my drill sergeant had said that once, years ago. It had seemed harsh then. Now it seemed like simple truth. I accept it, I said. When? Tomorrow night. The infirmary has late shift coverage sympathetic to our cause. Stanford has been complaining of chest pains. Stress. He will be moved to the infirmary for observation. There will be a window of approximately 30 minutes when certain security cameras are undergoing routine maintenance. During that window, he will suffer a medical emergency. A heart attack. Very sudden. Very fatal. The official cause will be undiagnosed heart condition exacerbated by stress. He is young, but it happens. How do I get inside? You don't. We have a camera feed that will show you everything. You will watch from a secure location. And when it is done, you will confirm he is dead. Then we all walk away and never speak of this again. That seemed wrong. If I was going to order a man's death, I should have the courage to witness it directly. To own what I'd done. But Bruno was right about the practical concerns. My physical presence would be an unnecessary risk. Show me the feed, I said. Bruno produced a laptop. The screen showed a grainy, black and white view of a small infirmary room. One bed, basic medical equipment. This is the room. Tomorrow night, Stanford will be in that bed. And he will not leave. The next day was surreal. I went through the motions. Breakfast with Amber and Karina. A client meeting. Paperwork. But all of it felt distant, like I was watching someone else live my life. Coleman called around noon. The prosecutors offered Robert Phelps a deal this morning. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Witness protection. It's happening, true. Stanford's defense team is already filing motions to suppress evidence. They might actually get him off. Thanks for letting me know, I said, my voice steady. At 8 p.m., I drove to a storage unit on the outskirts of the city. Bruno was already there, with 2 men I'd never seen before. Middle-aged. The careful eyes of people who'd done violence professionally. Nobody offered names. Nobody shook hands. Bruno set up the laptop. The feed is live. Stanford was transferred to the infirmary 20 minutes ago, complaining of chest pains. The doctor on duty found nothing, but admitted him for observation. The night nurse just started her shift. She is one of ours. She will ensure no one else enters that room. The screen showed Stanford, pale and frightened, lying in the infirmary bed. Good, I thought. Let him be frightened. Let him know what it feels like to be helpless. How does it happen? I asked. One of the silent men spoke for the first time. Potassium chloride injection. Causes immediate cardiac arrest. When administered properly, it's nearly undetectable in routine autopsy. Combined with his documented anxiety and high-stress situation, the cause of death will be listed as heart failure. Natural causes. Who administers it? The nurse. She'll go in at 10 p.m. to check his vitals. She'll inject it into his foreline. He'll be dead within 90 seconds. She'll wait 5 minutes, then discover the body and call for help. By the time anyone responds, it'll be too late. The official story is that he died suddenly of a heart condition no one knew he had. I watched the screen. Stanford was alone in that room. Terrified. Probably praying his father would save him. But Robert Phelps was in federal custody. His empire destroyed. His power gone. Stanford was truly alone for the first time in his life. The minutes crawled. Bruno offered whiskey. I declined. My head needed to be clear. I needed to remember every moment. To own what I was doing. To accept the weight of it. At 9:55 p.m., the nurse entered the frame. A woman in scrubs, moving efficiently. Stanford spoke to her. The feed had no audio, but his body language was pleading. The nurse's expression was professionally neutral. She produced a syringe from her pocket, checked it, and approached the foreline. This was it. The moment I could still stop it. Call Bruno to abort. Let the legal system handle it. Preserve the version of myself who'd never ordered a man's death. But then I thought of Karina's words. What happens to the next woman? The nurse inserted the syringe into the foreport. Stanford's body went rigid. His back arched off the bed. Hands clutching his chest. His mouth opened in what must have been a scream, though the silent feed robbed it of sound. He thrashed for perhaps 30 seconds. Then went still. The nurse watched dispassionately, checking her watch. After a minute, she checked his pulse, then his pupils. Then she calmly walked to the door and left the room. I watched Stanford's body for another minute, waiting for some sign of life. Nothing. Stanford Phelps was dead. It's done, Bruno said quietly. One of the silent men shut down the laptop, began breaking down the setup. Within 5 minutes, the storage unit was empty. Except for Bruno and me. How do you feel? Bruno asked. Nothing, I said. And realized it was true. I'd expected guilt. Regret. Horror. Something. But watching Stanford die had felt like watching a problem solve itself. Cold. Mechanical. Necessary. That's good, Bruno said. The guilt comes later. Maybe. Or maybe not. Some men are built for this kind of work, and they never regret what must be done. Time will tell which kind you are. We drove back to the city separately. I arrived home at midnight. Amber was still awake, sitting in the living room with a book she wasn't reading. Is it done? She asked. Yes. She nodded slowly. I'm not going to ask details. I'm not going to judge. But Truman, promise me this was the last time. Promise me we don't become people who solve problems this way. I promise, I said, and meant it. I'd crossed a line tonight, but I wouldn't make a habit of it. This was an exception. A specific response to a specific threat. Not a new way of life. Amber embraced me, and we stood together in the quiet house, holding each other against the darkness we'd invited in. The news broke at 6 a.m. Stanford Phelps had died of sudden cardiac arrest while in custody. The medical examiner ruled it natural causes. An investigation was opened, but preliminary findings showed no signs of foul play. Robert Phelps, from his federal holding cell, reportedly broke down. His deal with prosecutors moved forward anyway. He had too much valuable information about too many powerful people. He would spend 10 years in minimum security, then vanish into witness protection. His empire gone, but his life preserved. Some might call that injustice. I called it acceptable collateral damage. The father had lost everything that mattered, his legacy, his reputation, his only son. Let him live with that. The following week brought a cascade of revelations. Robert's testimony implicated 32 public officials in corruption schemes spanning 15 years. The mayor resigned. The district attorney was indicted. Oregon's governor announced she wouldn't seek re-election. The fallout would reshape Portland politics for a generation. For the Larson family, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. Karina continued her recovery, finding strength in survivor advocacy. She'd become a voice for women silenced by powerful men, speaking at universities and legislative hearings about the need for justice system reform. I think I want to go to law school, she told me one morning over breakfast. I want to be the kind of lawyer who fights for people like me. Who makes sure men like Stanford don't get away with what they do. You'd be brilliant at it, I said, pride thickening my voice. Amber returned to teaching, finding solace in creating beauty with clay. She never asked me for details about that night, and I never offered them. Some things were better left unspoken between people who loved each other. Coleman Foster was promoted to detective sergeant. His role in exposing the Phelps corruption earning him commendations. He and I still met for coffee every Friday, talking about sports and family, anything except the night Stanford died. Bruno Moreno stayed in Portland for another week, long enough to ensure no investigation into Stanford's death gained traction. Then one evening, he appeared at our house with his leather bag packed. I return to Sicily tomorrow, he announced. The business here is finished. Karina embraced him. Thank you, Uncle Bruno, for everything. Family is everything, Bruno said simply. Never forget this. At the door, Bruno pulled me aside. You did well. The boy is gone. The father is destroyed. And justice, true justice, has been served. But Truman, remember what I told you. This kind of work changes a man. Watch yourself carefully. Make sure the darkness you invited in does not make itself at home. I will, I promised. Bruno studied me, then nodded. You are stronger than most. You will be fine. But if you ever need counsel, if the weight becomes too heavy, you call me. Some burdens should not be carried alone. After Bruno left, I stood on my porch in the cool November evening. Nothing looked different. Same houses, same streetlights. But I was different. I'd stepped outside the bounds of law and order. Taken justice into my own hands. Ordered a man's death. And I didn't regret it. That should have troubled me more. Then it did. But when I thought about Stanford Phelps, I felt only satisfaction. A predator removed from the world. Women safer because of it. My daughter could heal, knowing her attacker would never hurt anyone again. If that made me a monster, I could live with being a monster. 3 months later, in February, I sat in my office reviewing a routine corporate background check when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Thank you. It was from Diana Hurley, the woman in Seattle. She sent a link to a news article about a scholarship fund being established in Stanford's memory, funded by settlements from several of the women he'd assaulted who'd banded together. We're turning his death into something positive, Diana wrote. Making sure some good comes from all the pain. I don't know exactly what happened to him in that jail cell, but I know you were involved somehow. So, thank you for believing us. For protecting other women. For doing what the law wouldn't do. I deleted the message immediately. No record. No trail. But I allowed myself a small smile. The darkness I'd invited and hadn't made itself at home. It had simply eliminated a threat, then departed, leaving my family safe and my conscience clear. That evening, I found Amber in her studio, working on a new piece, a series of vessels representing strength emerging from brokenness. She looked up as I entered, clay on her hands and peace in her expression. How was your day? She asked. Good, I said. Routine client work. Nothing exciting. That's good. Boring is good. We'd become experts at normal conversation, maintaining the surface of our life while carrying the weight of what we'd done underneath. It was its own kind of courage, I thought. The courage to live with difficult truths and still find joy in ordinary moments. Karina was upstairs studying for her LSAT, her future taking shape. She was stronger now. Her spirit unbroken. She would heal. She would thrive. She would help other women do the same. And Stanford Phelps was gone. Not by the legal system. Not by the slow wheels of justice. But by the old ways. Family defending family. The strong protecting the weak. Evil men facing consequences they thought they'd escaped. Bruno had been right. It was very old-fashioned. Very permanent. And very, very necessary. I walked through my home, listening to Amber's music playing softly from the studio, hearing Karina's voice as she read practice questions aloud to herself, feeling the warmth of the life we'd built together. This was what I'd fought for. This was what I'd protected. And I would do it again in a heartbeat if I had to. But I hoped, deeply, sincerely, hoped that I'd never have to. One trip into that darkness was enough for any man. I'd seen what I was capable of when my family was threatened. Learned that my moral lines were less fixed than I believed. That knowledge would stay with me forever. A shadow in my mind that could never be fully banished. But shadows served a purpose. They reminded you where the light was. And what was worth protecting. And as I stood in my home, surrounded by the people I loved most in the world, I knew I'd made the right choice. Some men need killing. And some fathers love their daughters enough to become the men who do what needs doing. The world was safer for it, and the Larson family was whole. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.